All right, so as I said, hopefully by this point you all would have calculated your footing lengths, your brick lengths, and your CMU lengths. That is going to help you later on down the line. Once you have figured out your lengths, I want you to go ahead and create a key to the right hand side of your plans right before you get to your roofing plan. There's a huge blank section in the center. I want you guys to go ahead and put your length key in this section here. So it's going to be footing lengths, and it's going to say F1, F2, F3, F4, all the way to F7. And you're going to put your final length here, not what you had to add or subtract, just your final number. Okay, just a key right here. That way I know that you guys are on the correct path as far as your calculations are concerned. And then once you have all those, we are ready to move on to Division 3, which can be found, your scope of work can be found on the Moodle page, or excuse me, not the Moodle page, on the class review email. I will try to upload a copy to the Moodle page just in case you misplace it, or you spill coffee on it, or your dog chews it up, or whatever the case may be. But this is essentially what your Division 3 scope of work is going to look like. It is asking you for how much concrete your footings are going to be. And of course, that is measured in cubic yards. And how you get that is your length times your width times your height. And then you add those all up and you're going to put it here. Your piers are a little bit of a different animal, as well as your front porch slab. That is a little bit of a different animal. So I'm going to, in the next part of this video, just kind of touch base on how you're supposed to calculate these, so that we can move on to the next part of our project, which is concrete reinforcements, which we did not cover in our practice project. Okay, so stay tuned. All right, so as you can see, this is an example of my final project. Again, please do not just copy these lengths. There are some numbers that have been transposed incorrectly on purpose. It might not be on this page or any of the next pages, but do know that I have included some uh-ohs in there on purpose so that you're not just cheating and just copying verbatim what I have. I do want you all to learn something. So this is my footing calculation, everything that I had to add and subtract to get my final lengths. I then took my cubic yardage for my house. Again, it was just my total length times the width times the height, got my cubic footage, divided it by the 27, and I got my overall. Now, for the piers, it's a little bit different because you had, essentially 1 foot by 2 foot by 1 foot for your calculation. So I just took the total, since there were 7 piers at, since they were 2 feet, I just took 7 piers times it by 2. That got me my 14 feet, multiplied it by 2 feet of width versus 2 feet of height. And it got me, the 28 cubic feet divided by the 27, and that was the 1.04 cubic yards. Then my all-encompassing front porch calculation. Now this one is a little bit different, okay? So you have, this is my little janky drawing of what your front porch looks like after you've colored it, okay? So this is this right here. That's my version of my front porch connection. So I have my F4, my F5, my F6, and my F7. From outside of brick to outside of brick, the dimension is 26.50 feet. And then this dimension over here is from outside of brick, outside of CMU to outside of brick. So outside of CMU on this back leg here to outside of brick on the front hand side of your front porch. So again, dimension is from this backside purple line to this dimension right here to the outside of your brick line. All right. So then I took my 2650 and I subtracted out 0.58 feet from both sides. Hopefully you guys know what 0.58 translates to as far as decimal feet is concerned. And that gave me a total, width of 25.43. And the reason why I did that is because the width of the Roloc without the 1-inch overhang, okay? And that information can be found on your page 4, porch section detail, all right? So if this full thing here is 8 inches, you have a 1-inch version of overhang, so I am only subtracting out 7 inches to get to this line right here. That's essentially what I did. I took off 7 inches from both sides to accompany, so 7 inches from this side and 7 inches from this side inward to get my 25.34 length. Ouch. And then my concrete slab depth, I took my 8.33, subtracted out again 7 inches, and then subtracted out a full 8 inches from the rear. So if we're looking at it once it's colored, this is my 8.33 length. I took 7 inches off the front because remember, we're not including that 1-inch overhang. And then I took a full 8 inches off of the back in order to get my concrete slab, and that gave me my dimension of 7.08. So essentially, I just need my length, width, and height. So my length is the 25.34, which we calculated up here. Ooh, it's a little blurry. Then multiplied it by the 7.08, which is right here, and then times it by the height of 0.33, which translates to 4 inches in decimal feet. And I got a total of 59.20 cubic feet. That is a CF. I know my C's and my L's look very similar. And then I subtracted the 59.20 cubic feet, divided it by 27, and I got a total of 2.19 cubic yards. Okay, cubic feet divided by cubic feet gives you cubic yards. So that is essentially how you calculate the first portion of your scope of work. Again, I'm just rolling through these very quickly just because you will have a step-by-step guide, and it will be posted to the class review page and to Moodle, whichever one is easiest. Moving on to the next part of your scope of work, that is your concrete reinforcing, which is your rebar, your grade stakes, your chairs, and your welded wire fabric or welded wire mesh, whichever one you want to call it, for Division 3 as well. So I have my rebar calculation. I took my length, multiplied it by 3 runs of rebar because as you can see on your foundation plan, it says you have 3 number 4 rebar continuous. Got that length. We're using 20 feet pieces of rebar for our project. You get that. Then you need to also add in a margin of error and, a little bit of fluff for your corners so that you have something to tie into. So that comes out to a 10% margin of error. So you want to multiply your total number of pieces by 1.10 so that you can get your final end number. And that was the 30.36 for my case, and I got 31 pieces. As long as you get somewhere between 30, 31, 32, you are A-okay. All right, our numbers do not have to match 110%, but they do need to be within the same ballpark. In order for me to give you credit for it, because like I said in the beginning, no 2 humans round the same. So, there is going to be a little bit of a margin of error when it comes to these calculations. Grade stake calculation is pretty simple. You're just going to take each individual footing length, you can't add it up and divide it because then you're going to have a lot less than everybody else. You're going to take each individual length, divide it by 4 foot on center, get the number of pieces, add 1 to it, add 1 piece to it, get that total, and then round it up, okay? And you're going to repeat this process for every single one of them. Now notice how I have a unit of measure and a decimal place for every single calculation, okay? And then I have a box around my final answer. That is what I am looking for when it comes time for you to turn in your projects. Now, your chair calculation is very simple. Your chairs don't get piers. So whatever number you get up here for your grade stake, just subtract out the number of piers you have, and that should give you your total. For your welded wire fabric, you already know that the length of your concrete slab, your width and depth, is 25.34 and 7.08, because that's what we had calculated for your front porch slab. And that's going to give you your area of square footage that you need to cover for your welded wire fabric. And then your finishing is just going to be that exact same number. So very simple. Once you get to the bottom of that, that completes your division 3 for your final project.